As the plane's descending, I get a message that says something to the effect of, brace yourself. I wake up from a phone call from my mother-in-law. She says, Brooklyn is being rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. This is my wife. Well, I'm getting text message updates as I head to the airport. Just got to the hospital. They just checked her in for triage. They just found 2 liters of blood in her abdomen. The next message is ruptured ectopic pregnancy. So I land, I run through the airport, I get in the Uber, we rush to the hospital, and I get to a room and I'm expecting to open the door and to be embraced by my father-in-law with my deceased wife so I can say goodbye, and they take her body away. I sit down at her bedside, I ask my father-in-law, I say, hey, how's she doing? Before he can answer, she has this intense seizure-like reaction. And by the 4th day, she starts coming to. And I remember having a conversation with her. I asked her, I said, do you remember that seizure that you had? It was the only time she had moved. She was basically in a state of comatosis up until she woke up. And she said, yeah, when I heard your voice, it gave me life.
Welcome, everyone, to the Beyond the Cover podcast. My intent with creating this podcast was to provide a platform where men can speak openly about their journeys with mental health without fear of judgment while doing so. While I, the host, or you, the listener, may not agree with everything or anything that a certain guest says for that matter, my focus is not to decipher what is right or wrong. Rather, it's to gain a better understanding of why somebody thinks and acts the way that they do. And with this understanding, we will begin to make better sense of our own lives and the world around us. So join me as we open the books into these men's journeys and dissect the pages within. Today's guest is Tyler Hall. As you, the listener, will hear today, Tyler has went through quite a bit in regards to a spirituality journey with his wife that tested his faith more so than he thought it ever would. I'm excited for you to hear how his adversity shaped him to be the best version of himself that he currently can be. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Tyler Hall, welcome to Beyond the Cover.
Thank you, brother. This is a real honor to be with you doing this, episode 1. This is going to be really cool, I think, Clayton, to be able to look back on this and see how far you're going to be able to take this thing in a short amount of time. I have a lot of belief in you. And you and I can talk about the dynamic here of how we're working together on this, if it's helpful or appropriate for the audience. But I'm really thrilled that you're having me on episode 1. And I look forward to doing this with you.
Well, Tyler, I'm thrilled to have you on as the very first guest. It only makes sense. You and I, we met, actually went on your podcast first. You are the host of the Roller Coaster podcast. I came on there. We had a discussion. We've done a few breathwork sessions. We both understand the importance of mental health.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be more excited to dive in with this today with you because I know that your story needs to be heard.
Thank you.
And so we're going to jump right in. So on the cover, I mentioned you are the host of the Roller Coaster podcast. But of course, that's just one of the many things that you do. You sold a tech company, I believe it was back in 2022, called 21, okay, called Drivably.
Yep.
I tried to find online how much you sold it for. I could not figure that out, but I will say I saw your Instagram story this morning. I saw your backyard. I could put probably 100 of my Airbnbs back there.
Yeah.
So it's safe to say you're doing pretty well financially.
Yeah, thanks.
You also are a business coach for individuals that are entrepreneurs that have businesses looking to go to that exit strategy point. You are the owner of AZ Rocket Studios, which you plan to take nationally. Yeah. So another passion project of yours. You're a father to 2? 4. Okay.
Yeah. We keep cranking them out, so I don't blame you for losing track.
Plans of adding more to the equation?
Honestly, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there an upper limit?
10 seems like a lot, so, somewhere between 4 and 9 is
Okay.
probably right.
Yeah, that's fair. It's like either 4 or 9. There's the in between doesn't matter.
It's all the same after 4. I
okay.
think.
That's good to know as someone that has no children. We'll see if we make it to that point, but okay. So that's quite a bit of responsibility on your hands, mouths to feed, people to take care of.
Yeah.
And you're only 33 years old.
Yeah.
You have accomplished a lot, and you're just getting started from what we've talked about. Tyler, what I want to start off with is a question that I really feel like you can go deep on this, and that's in the midst of all of your success, what is that one thing that you still long for on a deeply personal level?
I think it's to have a genuine and thoughtful and meaningful relationship with God. I think that's the thing that I think about. 2 things in my life at this juncture more than I think about anything else. And those 2 things are, how is my relationship with God and how am I further developing that? And how is my relationship with my wife and my kids? And how am I acting on a daily basis to set the tone for my wife and my children? And those are 2 areas that come with incredibly large and long tail, potentially eternal repercussions if you don't do them well. And so, look, I could go build another company and sell it or lose all my money. And at the end of the day, it wouldn't matter that much. It would be okay. I could raise $100 million of capital from investors and lose all of it. And my life would still go on. It would be fine. Those are short-term implications when you make mistakes in business that have financial implications. Okay, these are short-term. But my eternal salvation, because of my deep-rooted relationship with God and understanding Him better and how the atonement works, and the principles that I teach my children, that they're going to teach their children, who will teach their children, that to me is much more important, and it's a lot heavier. So it's what I spend the most amount of my time thinking about improving today.
I want to go a little bit deeper on the topic of faith and your relationship with God.
Yeah.
Where would you say, to simplify things for a quick second, on a percentage scale, what percent do you feel that you are towards fully understanding your relationship with God? Is this a journey that you feel you're halfway there? Or are you just getting started? Are you so close? Where would you say that you feel you are currently on that faith journey?
I think I'm probably more than 50% of the way there, but the rest of the whatever percentage is left is going to be a lifelong pursuit until one day I'll die and have the opportunity to meet Him face to face. And so I don't know that I'll ever be content. I think my barometer for success around this, like how do I feel, has a lot to do with my ability to communicate a message to Him and then receive guidance and inspiration back. Okay, which I would call the Holy Spirit or the Holy Ghost, is the way that most religious people would refer to what that feeling feels like. Mm-hmm. And so that's my barometer, is can I on a daily basis feel the Spirit and make decisions based on what a Heavenly Father would want for me and my family.
Absolutely. That's just very powerful. And you mentioned the feeling of being content, and you don't think you'll ever get to that place. I like to put those, being content and having enough, I think they're synonymous. Do you feel that feeling is a trap? Do you think that getting to a place of having enough or being content, does that excite you, or is it something that scares you to get to that place? Or do you avoid getting to the place of feeling like you have enough?
I think that one of the main purposes of this life on earth, and what happened before this life on earth and what's going to happen after this life on earth, is the idea of constantly making progress in all areas of our life, right? And so I don't like the concept of contentment nearly as much as I like the idea of lifelong and eternal progression. Okay, and so the counter argument to that is like, well, you're never going to be perfect, so what's the point in trying? Perhaps, right?
Yeah.
But for me, it's like my life, when I'm making progress, feels better. When I'm making improvement, feels better. When my relationship with my wife is improving, my life feels better. Then you would say, like, well, what does that even mean? What does better mean?
Yeah.
Well, the best way that I like to think about, like, what feeling I'm trying to optimize for in this eternal progression is fulfillment. Well, what does that mean? Okay, we're going deep here. When I think of fulfillment, Clayton, I want you to think about a heart, okay, inside of your chest. And I want you to think about this heart being carved into a pie.
Okay.
And you get to decide what slivers exist inside of the pie. Okay, i.e., what are you optimizing for in your life? This could be financial well-being. This could be spiritual well-being, connectedness to God. This could be physical health. It could be mental health and well-being. It could be relationships. It could be, I want to feel more joy or happiness. I want to feel more peace. Okay. Once you have chosen and decided what components make up your pie, your heart-shaped pie, then you need to assess how full are each of these slivers of the pie. If each sliver of the pie is at 100%, therefore you are fulfilled. You are fully filled. Okay?
Okay.
I think it's better if you visualize the pie and I won the money game. Well, one little sliver of that pie is 100%. But what about the things that actually matter, like my relationship with my spouse and my kids, my connection to God, my physical health? Health is wealth. We hear this, right? What if those are all at 20%? What does that pie look like? Well, it looks pretty empty. Okay. Overall, maybe you're 30% fulfilled. Whereas if each area is at 80% full, how full does that pie look? Well, it looks pretty full. Okay. So the idea of fulfillment, to me, that's the easiest way for me to think about it and conceptualize it.
Okay.
And I think that is the constant pursuit in how do I make progress against the things that matter the most in my life to become fully filled in my heart-shaped pie.
You mentioned the different slivers that can exist. What would your advice be to somebody that is looking for that sense of fulfillment? What should their slivers look like? Does it look differently for everybody, or is there a category of 5 things that most individuals are chasing, in your opinion? And the reason I'm asking this question is because I think a lot of people are misguided, or they don't understand what they should be pushing toward. What is my purpose in life? What is going to make me feel whole? What's your advice to those individuals? Should they be narrowing in? As somebody that seemingly has a lot of these things, financials, you have the financial part of the pie. It appears you have the relationship side of the pie. You mentioned you can always progress. You have the success through your jobs. What do you feel really gives you the most meaning, and what would you recommend most people chase after?
Well, what gives me the most meaning is going to be a different answer than what generally are the right things to focus on, which is going to be a different answer than what should you focus on.
Okay.
Okay. What gives me the most purpose that I believe is number one above all is our relationships. That is
Absolutely.
with God first. Okay. Very important that God is first.
Yeah.
Then it is with a significant other, a spouse. Then it's with your children. And then it's with name what comes next. Other family members, close friends, I think I would put them in a tie for fourth. Okay. So for me, that's number one. Now, the general consensus is the 4 F's, which you've heard these. It's faith, again, number one, family, finance, and fitness. Okay. And I would put fitness, I would just categorize that as health, which encompasses physical and mental health, which we can all, I think, consensus says that physical fitness leads to better mental health. Okay. But the right answer, the answer of what do you advise people actually do? It's like sit down and think through this for yourself. Okay. Like at the end of the day, Clayton, like everybody's looking to be told what to do. Everybody's looking for like, oh, I love Clayton. What does he have to say? I love Tyler. What does he have to say? I love name the famous influencer. Like, what do they have to say? It's like, no, like what is right for you? And sometimes that just takes like turning your phone off and not looking at a screen and just using your brain for once and being like, what do I actually want? What do I have a lot of? What do I want to bring in? What do I want to go out? Like, sit down, contemplate it, think through it, and then make the decision what belongs in your pie of fulfillment.
I love that because I believe what you're alluding to is to listen to your intuition. I mean, that's what I would call it. This is a new journey for myself.
Yeah.
Do you feel that your intuition can ever lead you astray down the wrong path, or do you feel that your intuition will lead you down the path that you need to go in order to grow, even if that feels like the wrong path at that time? Should you always trust your intuition?
Yeah, I believe that intuition is a gift that all of us have been given from God, and we get to choose whether or not we listen to it. Right? Another way that I would think about intuition is, again, as like a gift called the Spirit that we've been given from God, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm unapologetic about talking about these things because of what they mean to me in my life. There's going to be people that are like, oh, whatever, spiritual guy. It's like, you know what? Like, the reason I am who I am is predominantly because of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that your intuition is always going to be correct. Your ability to follow it is never going to be 100%. There will inevitably be times where your intuition says, break up with that person. And your fear, okay, there's a framework that I teach called fear and anger gives bad advice. And it's the idea that anytime you make a decision based in a place of fear or anger, 100% of the time it's going to be the wrong decision. So in this case, your fear says, well, I can't break up with her or him because if I break up with him, he's going to sabotage me online. He's going to make my life miserable. He's not going to support me moving forward. He's going to hate me. It's going to be so traumatic. Well, and then you go break up with him and you do the opposite of the thing that the fear is telling you to do. And you go break up with him and you realize like, wait a second, that wasn't that bad. And it was actually better for him and he's happier, and it was much better for me and I'm happier, right? So that's one example of like, in most cases, when we don't follow our intuition, it's because there's fear in the back of our mind saying, don't go do that thing because you're going to face some difficult ramifications, which normally are not true.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think, fear stifles change until the pain of, was the saying, the pain of staying the same outweighs the pain of changing.
Yeah.
That's when people take action.
Yeah.
Tyler, I want to talk about, because you continue to bring it up, and I believe that when someone continues to bring something up, they're passionate about it. You said at the very beginning with your faith. I often find that individuals that are very passionate about something, there was some pivotal moment in their life that led them to that place, and they either had an abundance of this passion or they lacked it.
Yeah.
Or there was a moment where they had to make a decision whether or not they continued to pursue it. I want you to go back to that place. There's a soft smile there as I brought this up. Talk to me about that moment in your life where you decided to really lean into faith. Or did you ever question that journey?
It's a great question. And you're exactly right. I mean, there is a moment in every man's or woman's life where they will either inevitably get much closer to God or much further away in all of our life. Okay. Here's my story. I'm 30 years old. I'm just sold my software business to a public company, $4 billion company. I'm the youngest executive on that team by 20 years. I'm young, I'm rich, I have 3 small children. My life is seemingly about as perfect as you could design it to be. Okay. 4 months later, I'm on an elevator in Dallas. I'm on business. I jump on this elevator, and right before the doors close, a man sticks his arm in the door to stop it, to get on the elevator with me. I look at this man. I just say, "Hey man, how you doing?" And he looks me in the eyes and he says, I'm not doing well today. He said, I had to bury my 26-year-old son. And it's been the hardest day of my life. Right? Like, in most cases, when you ask somebody how they're doing, you get the same answer, which is, I'm well, how are you? And I'm well, and it's all bullshit. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm literally speechless. I don't know what to say. The guy says he didn't have a drug problem. This was a total fluke accident, and I'm just heartbroken. And I don't know how I'm going to carry on, kind of thing. The doors go up 10 floors, doors open. There's nothing else I can think to do than open my arms and embrace this man. I give him a hug. He pulls me back. He looks me in the soul, and he says, I don't even know your name. I don't know who you are, but if you have a family and kids, just hold them really close, because you never know when it's going to be their last day. I go up a few more floors. The doors close. I break down in tears, go up a few floors, get back to my room. I FaceTime my wife. Say, hey, I just had this experience and I wanted to share it with you. And I'm so sorry that I've been chasing the next coin and so focused on business for so many years, and I haven't been there for you and for the kids, and I could do better. And, she gave me a lot of grace through that whole thing. Okay. Almost exactly 1 month later, I'm in New York City. I'm getting ready to present the sale of my company on CNBC at NASDAQ on Wall Street. I mean, this is like every founder's dream, is like this moment. Okay. Mm-hmm. We do a dry run on a Monday, March 1st, 2022. I wake up from a phone call from my mother-in-law. She says, hey, Tyler, Brooklyn is being rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. This is my wife, her daughter, right? And I don't know how severe it is, but you should probably come home. So I hang up the phone. I text my assistant. I say, I got to get out of New York. I got to get home right away. Why? What's going on? I don't know. Something's happened to my wife, right? Well, at this stage of my life, like sort of every bad thing that's ever happened, life had a way of just working it out. Like, you hit this bad thing happens, and like you realize it's not that bad. Okay. Well, in this case, like, it was a little different, right? So I thought maybe she got lightheaded. She was home with the kids alone. Maybe she forgot to eat. She passed out, hit her head. It's going to be fine, right? Well, I'm getting text message updates as I head to the airport. I'm in the back of an Uber. My father-in-law is sending me updates that read this. Just got to the hospital. They just checked her in for triage. They just found 2 liters of blood in her abdomen.
Wow.
Okay. The next message is a picture of the whiteboard in the hospital. That was the diagnosis written down by the doctor. It says ruptured ectopic pregnancy. At this point, I'm at the airport. I go to Google. I realize that in more than 50% of cases when this happens in the home, it's fatal. And so I go from, she's lightheaded, just passed out, it's fine. This is the way life works. It's going to be okay. To my wife's going to die. And the next string of messages were they rushed her in for an emergency surgery. And for 4 hours, still in surgery, still in surgery, still in surgery, with no updates. As the plane's descending, I get a message that says something to the effect of, from my father-in-law, brace yourself. It doesn't look like she's going to make it. Okay, and I read this as, she's gone, but you're not telling me until I get there. I was sure of this, like nearly 100% sure. My intuition said, like, she's gone. And so I went through every scenario in that moment. Like my whole life flashed before my eyes. I've known my wife since I was 3 years old. We grew up together as kids. Yeah. So all these memories of growing up together and dating and getting engaged and being married and having children, everything just flashed before my eyes. And it made me ask a lot of questions. What is this all for? What is life about? Who is God? Is God? I mean, this can't be God doing this. Like, very confused. Will I ever date again? Like, how am I going to tell my kids? Right? Every question. So I land, I run through the airport, I get in the Uber, we rush to the hospital, I run past the emergency room exit, I jump on the elevator, go up to the second floor, and I get to a room and I'm expecting to open the door and to be embraced by my father-in-law with my hopefully deceased wife so I can say goodbye and they take her body away. This is what I'm thinking. Well, I open the door and the first thing I realize audibly is that the heart rate monitor is still on. And so I just had this intense sort of level of gratitude for one more moment with her. I sit down at her bedside. I ask my father-in-law, I say, hey, how's she doing? Before he can answer, she has this intense seizure-like reaction. And I'm running into the hall and I'm pulling in whoever I can to try to stop this. And they come in, they hook her up to some devices. She's already got a double blood transfusion going in both arms. It's a horrific sight. They get her calmed down, and that one more moment turns into one night. And I wake up the next day, she's still alive. And this is, by the way, against what the doctors were telling me, which was the probability of her making it was incredibly low. She had lost too much blood, lost almost half the blood in her body. Well, that one day turns into a second day, and then a third day. And by the fourth day, she starts coming to. And I remember having a conversation with her. I asked her, I said, what was that? Do you remember that seizure that you had? It was the only time she had moved. She was basically in a state of comatose up until she woke up. And she said, yeah, when I heard your voice, it gave me life. And this was one of these, like, just pivotal moments in my relationship and connection to my wife, with my relationship with God, right? It was like, oh, he has designed us to be this way. When we take somebody's hand in marriage and we commit to being with them forever, that means that we are one. And we actually have the ability to save each other's lives just with the words of our mouth, essentially. Okay. Absolutely. So the silver lining in all of this is she makes it, she lives, not without tons of complication. We lost that child in the process, which was hard, but probably not grieved the way we should have because we were so focused on her. Okay, why do I share that story? In connection to my relationship with God. And what was the moment, okay? Initially, the thoughts crossed my mind like, what the hell, God? Why? Why her? We need her. She's like, we have 3 kids. Please, like, just not now, right? And that quickly, man, turned to just so much gratitude and such a deep connection with him, because there were a dozen or so massive miracles that had to happen, that had to be orchestrated by an intelligent being like God in order for it to happen. Okay. One of those, she's unconscious for multiple days. We're being told she's going to die. I text everybody in my phone, will you join me in fasting and prayer? Okay, this is a religious belief where you sacrifice something that's essential to life, like food, for a period of time, to call upon God, to show him your faith and your willingness to ask for something that you have in need. Okay, you're doing an exchange with God. Mm-hmm. Hundreds of people get involved in this fast. We start the fast at the same time. We end the fast. The next morning she wakes up against all odds. Is that a coincidence? I don't think so. When we got home from the hospital, I'll share 2 of the many miracles, okay? She starts going downhill. She turns pale. She says, I feel the same feelings. I feel like I'm dying. I'm getting her stuff together. I'm sort of in panic mode. I've already got a ton of trauma. This is still fresh. And I say, we're going to the hospital. I go to load her up. Literally right before I lift her out of her bed, she can't even walk. She's so frail, just so weak. There's a knock at the door. I go, hey, babe, sorry, just one sec. Let me see who this is, right? I answer the door. It's the woman who is designing the home that we are building at that time. Okay, which, by the way, we shouldn't have went with them for a lot of reasons. I have a friend that's one of the most successful custom home builders. For some reason, I decided not to go with my best friend and work with this other random couple that designs and builds homes. So many reasons why we shouldn't have even known who this person was at this stage of our life. Mm-hmm. Well, she knocks at the door. I answer the door. I say, hey, Ashley, this isn't a good time. Brooklyn's not doing well. I've got to get her to the hospital. She's holding like an Easter basket in her hand, and it's full of like food and supplements and medicine, all this stuff. And I'm literally about to close the door, like, hey, just come back later. We'll figure it out. She goes, do you mind if I come in? She said, I have, for the last 15 years, I've been dealing with severe blood loss issues. And I'm one of the most qualified people in the state of Arizona that knows how to naturally increase your hemoglobin and blood levels using supplementation. Here are all the supplements. Do you mind if I just come in and see if I can help? I didn't even know she knew what was going on. I don't know if anybody even told her. She said, I had a feeling I just had a feeling I was supposed to come by. Okay, so she walks in. I say, she's in our room. She walks back there. Have you ever met a human that you were totally convinced was not a human? You're like, this person's like an angel. Like, this can't be real, right? This is that feeling. It's like she was literally glowing as she's walks in, grabs my wife's hand, who's dying, right? Says, hey, Brooklyn, it's okay. I've been there. I know what you're feeling. And I can help. And she starts feeding her food and loading her with supplements and orders in an IV. And she's calling her husband to grab a certain type of broth that contains a certain ingredient that helps with blood levels. And within an hour, my wife's color starts coming back. You're telling me that's an accident? Like that happens by chance? It's impossible. That had to be inspired by God. And that was one, Clayton, of 10 or more things just like that had to be intelligently orchestrated. So that's why my connection with God at that point, my faith, just became immovable.
Well, for one, I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, that is absolutely incredible. And I agree with you. There are just some people that feel otherworldly, don't understand how it comes to be what it is, but they just happen to be there at what feels like the perfect timing.
Yeah.
Does she know that individual? This story? You've told her?
Yeah.
You still keep in touch?
Oh, yeah. I had her on the podcast. It hasn't aired yet, but it will go out in the next couple of weeks. And we talked about it. Yeah.
That's incredible. Tyler, that's an extremely traumatic experience. For one, you went from a moment of what was likely one of the highest of highs. You're in New York, a massive opportunity, and then the pendulum seemingly swings in the opposite direction to the worst, possible degree.
Yeah.
It absolutely does not shock me that you have the faith that you do now that I know that story. On the topic of trauma, I think there's a negative connotation attached. In fact, I know there is. When people hear trauma, there's this negative connotation attached to it. Do you feel that trauma is essential for growth? Inevitable for growth? I will go as far as to say that. Do you believe it's inevitable for growth and that people should welcome it instead of running from it?
Yeah, I think everything great, if you trace back, everything great in your life was on the other side of something incredibly difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's experiences like I went through. Sometimes it's relatively, maybe not on that same level, but it was on the other side of doing something really hard.
Mm-hmm.
If you're listening at home, you're in a great relationship. Has it always been great? Has it always been perfect? Or have you had to go through some shit? You've had to go through some shit in 10 out of 10 cases, okay? You're financially successful. Was that easy to do that? Was building a company and having no money for 5 years easy? No. It's incredibly hard, right? So I think that it's designed to be this way. From the person who has experienced the greatest amount of suffering and trauma in the history of the world, Jesus Christ, he has also received the most amount of glory of anybody to ever walk the face of the earth. So why is that, right? It's like the harder we fall, the higher we're going to descend.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of God's plan. It's part of just this whole plan of salvation,
mm-hmm.
is going through these really, really hard things. So I find it incredibly essential. It's also relative, right? So you think about trauma, you think about, let's call it rock bottom. It's relative.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's rock bottom, everybody's lowest of lows, that's their reality. It was low. Doesn't matter if you suddenly lost a child or if you stubbed your toe on a door and that was the hardest. It was still your hardest reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, incredibly important, but maybe just as important to recognize when you're in the trough, when you're in the gutter, when your face is in the floor, when you're at that rock bottom, and somehow you keep digging the rock bottom deeper and deeper. It's important to realize that that's all part of the plan.
Absolutely.
And in order to achieve the highest of highs, you've got to go low.
What would be your biggest advice for somebody that's facing a current traumatic episode that seemingly just isn't ending? What do you think is the most important thing they can do to navigate through that trauma?
I have this thing that I share in my men's group called levels. I've had every person I did a retreat in Sedona with 25 men a few months ago. I'm doing another one coming up in Zion National Park that you'll be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And I make these men in the mornings do a cold plunge, which is something that's incredibly uncomfortable for most people.
It
right?
definitely is. Yeah.
And I essentially guide them through a meditation while they're in this plunge. Okay. And one of the things that I say that's maybe the pivotal moment in the entire, or the most powerful words that I can offer these men is that your breath is what will save you. This applies to almost everything. When you're going through it, sit down and just breathe. Just take a deep breath. You'd be amazed at how your physiology can change just through taking one deep breath. Like we can do it right now. I literally feel better. It seems crazy. Do it. If you're at home,
Mm-hmm.
do it. Okay, so one of those things is just breathe. The other one is one of my favorite quotes that I have all over my office in different areas, which is to trust the process.
Mm-hmm.
You have to trust that whatever it is that you're going through is happening for a specific purpose that today you don't understand, but that's okay. Because tomorrow or the next day or at some point in the future, you will understand. And the more times you've gone through that cycle of like, I went low, this hurts, what's coming? Oh, it was this thing. The more times you go through that, the more you realize to trust the process. Like, damn, this hurts really bad, dude. Like, oh. But you just know that it's part of the plan. So those are my two pieces of advice.
I couldn't have said it better. I think it's so important that people realize for me, feels like it's for a bigger purpose.
Yeah.
I also lean back on prior experiences and say, if I got through this, what can I get through?
Yeah.
The idea of breathing, I believe, brings presence. And I think that's what I would equate it to is you have to be present in those moments and ask yourself, why am I going through this?
Yeah.
And just take it step by step. Tyler, this conversation has been absolutely incredible. I want to ask you, is there anything, because this is a men's mental health podcast, although I want this to reach men and women, and I know that it will.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you'd like to specifically say or mention that people you think should know that maybe they're not aware of right now when it comes to mental health that you'd like to put out there to the universe?
I'd be happy to riff for a little bit. There are a few things.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't know this, but men die by suicide approximately 4 times more often than women do. 80% of all suicides in the last 10 years have been men. Okay? Why don't we talk about this? Because society has told us we are supposed to be a certain way and act a certain way and say certain things, and what is that leading to? That's leading to this idea. By the way, 50% of men suicide. There was no previous signs of mental illness
Mm-hmm.
at all. There was no chemical imbalance in their mental health that led to suicide. What happens is things get so heavy and so boiled over, and 93% of men say that they felt like they had nobody they could turn to in their darkest hour.
Mm-hmm.
That what other option do I have but to just say, I can't do this anymore. It's too much. I'm not depressed. I just can't keep loading more and more weight on my shoulders. It's compressing me to the place where this has to be it for me. Okay. There's 3 things that I think men can start doing for each other that will change and start to course correct this epidemic that we're dealing with, which is the suicide rate among men being at an all-time high globally today. Okay. Thing number 1, I want you to think about again, we're talking about the idea of fulfillment, okay? But this time, visualize a glass that has water in it. Mm-hmm. And at any given moment, that glass is going to be empty to full or potentially spilling over, okay? There are moments in our life where you have more excess than you can even hold in your own glass. Let me ask you this, Clayton. Would you rather that excess spill out onto the floor and get wasted and dry up and nobody have access to it? Or would you rather take that excess as it's spewing out of the top of this glass and pour it into somebody else's? Your cup is running over. It's overflown, okay? So thing number one, when your cup is overflowing, give it to somebody else. It costs you nothing. It costs me nothing to right now pour into your glass. It costs me nothing. Thing number two, the concept of reaching out just to reach out. Okay, we've lost sight of this. Like, it's like you have people in your life, I guarantee, that when they call you, you just go, oh, what do they need now? And you answer, hey, what's going on, mom? Hey, what's going on, sister, brother, friend, colleague? And it's almost like without them even saying, how are you? They're like, hey, I need something. Can we change this? Can we start to change this to where instead of calling every time we need something, being thoughtful about using our intuition, maybe asking God in the morning, who can I reach out to today that could benefit from this?
Absolutely.
And just listen and sit there, and names will come to your mind. And instead of analyzing whether or not you should reach out, call, text, just do it. Pick up the phone. Hey, Clayton, how are things? Good, man. What's up? What do you need? Literally nothing. Are you good?
Yeah.
How's your life? You okay? Yeah, man, I'm good. I'm good. All is good. Are you sure? Like, hey, man, what's up? How are things? Are you good, man? Something about that text didn't feel right. You good? Yeah, I know I'm good, man. I'm good. Thanks for checking. Clayton, you good? Dude, I'm here for you, man. You know what, man? I'm going through it. Thanks for calling. Here's what's going on. And just listen. And just say, dude, you don't offer any advice. Don't say I've been there. None of that. Just like, hey, man, I'm here for you. If you ever need to talk, just call me. Okay? I'm here for you. That's number two. Okay? And number three is the concept of doing hard things. Okay? And I don't want this to come off like I'm macho and overly masculine. Okay? I am macho. But the concept of doing hard things is incredibly important. Why? Well, when you put your mind and your body through dis-ease and through stress, what does that do? It makes it so when the inevitable super hard things come, you just kind of stare them at the face and go, I do harder things. Mm-hmm. I do. So this hard shit, I'm used to it. I always do it. So sometimes that means you have to fabricate putting your mind and your body through distress. That's why cold plunging is so good. It's so hard. Mm-hmm. That's why going to the gym is so good, because it's hard. You're literally tearing your muscles up when you go to the gym.
Yeah.
Okay? So to put a bow on that, Clayton, when your cup is full, pour it into somebody else's. When it's overflowing, pour it into somebody else's. Okay? Number two, reach out just to reach out for no other reason. Be intentional about it. Do this every day. Utilize your intuition to do it. Number three, do hard things. Okay? For once, go out and do something hard. And this is what ultimately is going to stand the test of time when fighting these demons that we deal with on a daily basis.
It's incredible advice. And I just want to echo that. Number two is huge. I can't tell you how many guys I've texted and said, how's your mental health? And the response I get is almost universal. Hey, man, I really appreciate you asking.
Yeah.
And then they'll usually dive into it.
Yeah.
Such a simple, just few words will make somebody feel seen and heard. You may just alter the trajectory of the path they're heading down. So I love that advice. Tyler, you know that we could talk for hours on this. I know this is the first of many, many conversations. But for now, I just want to thank you so much for coming on Beyond the Cover today. Your story truthfully will change lives. And thank you so much for your time today.
It's my pleasure. Great job. Thanks.